Welcome to another live stream. It's our time to get together and talk about gang stalking, about group harassment, group mobbing, um, the isolation of the targeted individual, and we're gonna focus in on post-traumatic syndrome, the effects of harassment, and some of the gaslighting that you have to deal with as a targeted individual. It's brutal. I mean, one of the benefits of having a gang stalking community or people out there that are dealing with group harassment is that you're not in that isolated bubble as much as you would be, um, similar to what I dealt with, um, when I started dealing with this. There wasn't anything like this out there, but the benefit is that you can have that affirmation. You can know that you're not alone, and you might even meet some people that you can literally be friends with, because the isolation of the targeted individual is one of the worst aspects that you know that come into the life of a targeted individual. I mean, you feel so alone, not only in your circumstances, but literally. And then, even if you still have, I don't know, the people that you hang around with, or maybe even family members who aren't betraying you, it's just you can't really relate with them. And one of the I don't know, one of the effects of this, if you survive long enough to figure it out, not everybody does, is that you have to pretend like everything's okay. Okay, there's people out there would disagree with me, but I think on some level, if you're a targeted individual who's dealing with heavy harassment, you can't afford to wear your emotions on your sleeve. You can't afford to just, you know, be opening yourself up to the mechanisms of this harassment, because when you talk about the whole thing, or when you try to get help, or when you try to explain to people on the outside of of your nightmare what's happening, it's designed in a way where you will become discredited. You will become that individual suffering from a persecutory delusion, right? Because it doesn't seem logistically possible. Okay, and depending on who you are, uh, even if you're at a low level of harassment, you're still dealing with something that just doesn't seem logical. It doesn't seem to really have, the proper foundations in reality. Why would these people, be stalking you? Why would they be hell bent on ruining your life? Are you special? What is it about you that, and usually the target is going to have, I don't know, a little bit of, if nothing else, a little bit of failure, or they're going to have ordeals in their life that a lot of people will just say, well, you're just making excuses. You just don't want to try, or, your failures are your own fault. And they don't see what's happening. Either that, or they're just perps, and, they want to frustrate you. They want to use that whole medium of plausible deniability to draw you into the place where they can, manipulate your emotions and feed on you. And we're going to talk about some of that stuff, and gaslight you. And that's that's the name of the game in gang stalking, right? You know, hear no evil, see no evil. We have no idea what you're talking about, even though we are participating in, destroying you, or whatever, soft kill, or whatever the motive is, and the situation that you're in. Some people are being fed on. They're the vessel of wrath. Sometimes it's experimentation. You're that coercive object of demonstration, that if anybody decides to go against the group, or if anybody spills the beans or whatever, well, you can end up like them, and you don't want that. Okay, there's a price to pay in conformity. And I've mentioned before that, when people are doing this stuff, they are exposing the fact that there's a lot of slavery involved in this, and there's a lot of commonalities that you're going to see that they keep trying to sweep under the rug. Okay, because in this whole ordeal of gang stalking that you're dealing with, um, you're going to be confronted with different dilemmas. You're going to be confronted by people, and there's a whole lot of gaslighting in the sense that you know they have to convince you that it's justified, or they have to convince you that they believe it's justified, or they have to demonize you, or that they have to make other people believe that you deserve it, or whatever. Okay, there's always something they're trying to sell you, but the undeniable fact that you're going to run into all the time, that huge contradiction that is looming over the whole situation, is that they could be doing normal things. They could be spending their time helping people or engaging in something fun and productive, but they are trading that for harassing you, and they are exposing an obvious need and a vacuum that they have in their life, even though they may try to, I don't know, sell you the idea that they're living the high life, or that you missed out or whatever. It's obvious when you see something like that. When you can see the frustration, when you can see, the gaslighting and the theatrical stuff that goes on, usually anger, when they start playing their games with you or whatever. Why don't you go see a psychiatrist? You need to get medicated, or you're losing it, and it's going to be too late if you. But in that whole process of trying to sell you, all these lies, and gaslight you or whatever, it's obvious that there's something wrong. There's a need, there's a vacuum, there's commonalities that these individuals have, and for the targeted individual, it's all about navigating the landmines of the lies and the gaslighting. Okay, and okay, hold on a minute. I'm gonna stop here and make sure that the sound is the sound okay. We've made that mistake before. The audio is very low. I'm gonna try to. Okay, let me see if everything. Okay, let's see what's going on out here. Can you guys hear me? Give me some feedback before we continue on this. Is everything okay? It's a bit muffled. The volume is wavy up and down. Okay, let me see if. Okay, I don't know. Maybe there's something wrong. Maybe we'll have to. Okay. Is there any improvement on that? Is there any improvement? There could be something stuck in my phone. Give me some feedback. Elijah said everything's okay. Anybody else have anything to say? Help me out here. Help me. Okay. Let me double check and see if there's something stuck in the. Carrying around your phone, uh, sometimes things can get stuck inside there, and maybe that's what's going on. We'll see if anything like that is happening, and we'll see if. Okay, let's. Sorry about this, guys. I didn't expect to have this technical issue. Okay. Huh. Well, give me some feedback. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay. Well, I don't. Yeah, this is just a phone, and so it could be my volume booster. Lisa Grant said it sounds good. We could have some perps trying to mess with me. I'm just kidding. Um, well, Lisa said it sounds good, so I'm just going to keep going with it, and I'm going to take my chances here. So anyway, getting back to the gaslighting and the trauma that targeted individuals deal with is that, for you as a target, you're going to be dealing with a lot of very stressful things. You're going to be dealing with an invasion into your mind through trauma, through the attacks. People are going to be sensitizing you so that they can trigger you. Okay. And there's going to be all kinds of things happening. You're going to be paranoid. You're going to have a hard time trusting people. You're going to be isolated. You're going to be confused. You're going to be stressed. You might be dealing with covert drugging. You might be dealing with a lot of things. Okay. Gang stalking is one of the worst things that you could do to someone, by the way. Okay. Um, you know, it would almost be more merciful. It would be more merciful just to kill you because you're being tortured. It's like a very slow, painful, confusing psychological and physical death because a lot of times targeted individuals will be dealing with a lot of physical health problems and so on and so forth, along with the psychological death. And ultimately they want you to do something so that you will hate yourself. You will internalize these things or turn into your own handler. And I've talked about that before, that the targeted individual is isolated, is subjected to psychological torture in a way where it causes a mental glitch. And so, the whole idea of you being attacked with innuendos or you being attacked uh, with a type of sensitization methodology uh, is that, you know, you will be, I don't, you will be sensitized and conditioned in a way that regular environmental stimuli will be used against you in the hopes of not only obfuscating the attack and the activity, but getting you to read into things. Right? And so the targeted individual is in a state of hypervigilance. They are paranoid, seemingly unwarranted paranoia. And objects of significance, things like that, keywords, phrases, whatever type of stimuli is used to sensitize the target. The whole idea is to get you to the place where you're even questioning yourself. And so, like I mentioned before, the first 2 to 5 years of the targeted individual deals with this is very crucial, and not everybody survives it. Okay, they don't. There are a lot of people out there who don't make it, and we may never know who they are. They may be in mental institutions. It may be people that go on mass shootings or whatever. We've seen a few of their manifestos. There's all kinds of things. And by the way, if you're thinking about doing that, don't do it. It's not going to solve anything. And like I said, ultimately they want you to hate yourself. And you know, the process of using innuendos, for example, is that a lot of times they will use personal information in that. And the whole idea is to get a targeted individual trying to read into everything. Is that person gang stalking me? Or what are you trying to say anyway? And they're like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. We were talking about the football game, or whatever is going on. And, the whole idea of attacking a target individual with that covert methodology is to get you in a type of mental glitch where you're always reading into something to exhaust you. And not only that, because ultimately the targeted individual will start to read into things in a way where they're going to make mistakes. Okay. Not only are you going to be exhausted, it's going to be obvious of your dysfunction. You're going to be constantly frustrated, which makes you easy to manipulate emotionally. But you're gonna make mistakes, and then of course you're going to be accused. That accusation gaslighting is going to come to. They're going to point their finger at you. You're crazy. That person just needs to switch out their headlight. They're just wearing a red shirt. I don't know what the hell your problem is, buddy. Or whatever. You're overreacting. That person didn't do anything to you, and sometimes it's true. And you see people that are making videos desperately trying to affirm themselves in the ordeal of gang stalking, and there's nothing there, man. There's just people living their regular life, or people at an accident scene or something like that. Some guy getting pulled out on the stretcher, and this targeted individuals, yeah, they set the whole thing up for me, man. It's because they want you to process information in a personal way. That's the whole reprogramming aspect of this is to get you to internalize that. And so they are literally turning you against yourself. And so they're turning everybody against you. They want everybody to believe you're crazy. They have, painting you as insane. They're turning you into the vessel of wrath, the scapegoat, not only of your social circle, your community, your family, or your workplace, or whatever, but now, ultimately they want you to start to torture yourself, which is usually what happens. And I've talked about that before. That the isolation alone, you start talking to yourself, and then of course you have all those things involved in the process of gang stalking, in the sense that the triggers have implications. And one of the implications, along with the surveillance that targeted individuals deal with, is that you are constantly being watched. How else would they have the personal information that they do when they attack you and shame you or whatever they're doing, triggering you? And the implication from complete strangers sometimes is that they know your business. They're watching you, right? You're on some type of Truman Show. You're on the dark web. Everybody in your city or whatever is after you, and they know, and they're watching. And whether you're in a room without windows, or you run out in the middle of nowhere, or you take off into that hotel and pull the blinds, lock yourself in the closet, surrounded by tinfoil, and this somehow they can see. And then you have some of the stuff out there, which I believe is probably disinformation, to where targets believe they're looking through your eyes or whatever, and all these other things. Which I know that there's a lot of technology and so on and so forth, but when you get into the dimensional aspect of gang stalking and really realize where you are, the spiritual application that involves technology and the dispensation of technology to mankind, some of the stuff you're dealing with is lies, disinformation, and gaslighting, smoke and mirrors. Okay, and that's the best part of it. I dealt with a lot of that stuff. The only difference back when I started dealing with it is that instead of telling me that the way that they were looking into all these things that were going on when I would get the street theater, the direct conversations, that it was witchcraft. We got a piece of your hair. We're looking through your eyes. You can see, what's going on, and all this and that. And now it's DNA resonance frequency or whatever. And some of the stuff out there that I've heard as far as technological, I don't know, explanations is a little more interesting than the DNA resonance frequency, which would be the neural swarm type of technology, rather than using infrared to communicate. It would be radio waves and the 5G, and so there's a lot of people out there that have looked into that whole thing, and how when targets are dealing with certain things, it's like they may hallucinate or think they see something, or hearing voices or whatever, the stimuli, the smelling things. Well, maybe it's not really in the environment. Maybe it's some type of technological trick to get you to believe it's there, because after all, the environment that you're interacting with, the world around you, the way that you perceive it is through chemicals and electronic signals in your body. And so if you can hijack that with technology, well, you could manufacture this, all these things, whether you're seeing things or smelling things or hearing things or whatever. I'm not saying that's not a possibility. I'm just saying that there's a lot of aspects to this whole thing that you have to be careful how you process the information, and the whole insinuation that everything about your life and everything about your scenario is that you're constantly being watched, and the implication that everybody knows is simply not true. Okay, and some of that is just a way to get you to freak out. It's a way to invade your mind with that proposition, create propositional tyranny, and extreme paranoia to irrational paranoia, and like I said, to turn you into your own worst enemy. Where now, the implications and triggers and so on and so forth that the target individual deals with. There's no rest. There's nothing that's private. Nothing that you can't ever relax. And you have to be on your guard, and you have to constantly read into the conversations around you, or try to figure out who the perp is, whatever. And the whole thing turns into a nightmare to where then you are gaslighted and accused. Okay, because what's going to happen to somebody when they're subjected to this type of treatment? Well, they're gonna be paranoid, man. It's a natural reaction. They're gonna isolate. Okay, and I've heard a lot of targets talk about that, and sometimes people in the target individual community are trying to push back on that whole thing, and then they start attacking other targets, and they don't know what they're dealing with. All right, I'll tell you what, I ain't gonna let them push me, and I'm gonna go live my life. Well, great, don't worry about that. Okay, that's good, but don't fool yourself. Okay, because the whole idea that all target individuals are dealing with the same thing is false, and some targets, you have to give them a break, right? Rather than to accuse them of just giving up or whatever, or being cowards or whatever. That's part of the gaslighting. Okay, that's part of the gaslighting, and I often see targeted individuals who become repurposed as perps. They become gang stalkers. They start accusing people. They start trying to fight back, and they're playing into that venomous twisted circle, to where now they have negative emotions or whatever, and they're looking for a scapegoat. Right? They're afraid that that they're giving in to something, or they're starting to contemplate suicide, or they're contemplating going out into the middle of nowhere, or just severing all connections with their family and everything. But they're not going to do that, because the whole scenario around the target is that you're being threatened with all these things, and then of course we're going to drive you crazy. You're gonna be a psychopath, or you're gonna be a serial killer. You're gonna be this. You're gonna be that, and along with all the other things that the targeted individual is dealing with, you start wondering what you're going to be like, in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And they want you to have that emotional breakdown. They want you to be so scared that they can accuse you of just not having faith in God or whatever, after they surround you by this environmental tyranny. And it's often that targets deal with that type of gaslighting, where because you're being subjected to this stuff, and the other people who are going to try and draw you out, or the people around you, or whatever, I don't know why you're so scared. What are you so worried about? And whether they try to turn it to an issue of faith, or whether they try to accuse you of something, it just amounts to subjective stimuli, right? And I talked about that before. You have the example of the big strong man, right? Who all of a sudden you start attacking that person, or you start to cause that destabilization in their life. You start dysregulating them, or you might even subject them to technology, or the demonic kind of thing, or whatever it is that makes them feel out of control. And that's all it takes. Okay, you can build somebody up, or you can tear somebody down, and what it amounts to in the end, along with uh, you know just some reasonable stuff that he's usually kind of taken off the table, is the environment that's around you. Okay, so the whole idea of flipping your environment, flipping your world upside down, is to obfuscate the activity with plausible deniability, and to gaslight you, and then get you to internalize this whole thing, paint you as crazy, and drive you into isolation or whatever, and then just accuse you and gaslight you. And so you can manufacture that type of attitude, or that type of disposition in an individual with subjective stimuli, right? And then of course, the whole idea is that you internalize it, right? So what I'm getting at is, you can't forget how you got the way you are, right? A lot of targets, it's like, well, I don't know if I can ever trust anybody again. I used to be friendly. I used to be exuberant. I used to be generous. I used to have a good attitude, and now you're being frustrated. There's all these implications. Oh, you're still okay? And it's from a complete stranger or something, some comments like that, or whatever. They'll walk up to you and say something, you know, oh, are you gonna be okay? And what the implications are that they know what's going on in your life, right? And things like that. Complete strangers that you have no, never met before or whatever. You might even be on the run as a target. And those are the implications and triggers that are used to attack targeted individuals and invade their mind and get them into that place where they're susceptible to the disinformation and those propositions. And then eventually, um, you know, you have to own it. That's the whole idea, right? And I've heard this from a lot of people before. Is it possible? Am I ever gonna be the way I used to be before? You know, am I ever gonna? Well, you were blind before, first of all. So let's put it on the platter correctly. Let's If we're gonna lay this stuff out on the table, we have to do it correctly. Okay. First of all, you didn't know what was going on before. Second of all, you weren't being attacked, and you weren't subjected to this nightmare. And thirdly, you didn't have to sit around and try and figure out how to put your life back together. So things are going to be different. Okay, it doesn't mean that it's over. Okay, but the benefit of the whole idea or the whole ordeal that you're being subjected to is that you see the truth. Okay, so rather than to have on those rose-colored glasses and just be walking around in ignorant bliss, you're gonna be confronted with a lot of things, not only your own frailty, but the frailty of the world around you. And the whole idea is through that you can be liberated and experience something significant and genuine. And I've mentioned this before that when you see the truth about the world around you, you are confronted with the reality of judgment and evil and all those kinds of things, which go into the biblical framework. Which I've talked to other people before, and they're like, "Well, yeah, but it just doesn't seem to make sense. Are you sure, that there's going to be a judgment day or whatever? Maybe we're all just going to, come into this place of enlightenment, and the whole world is just going to go out of this, pleroma somewhere into this, energy, guff or something." And it's like, well, wait a minute. How are you going to explain all the things you're dealing with? Well, I can't. I don't know. Well, okay, because there is something going on, and there is an explanation for the death and the evil and all this abrasive stuff that you're confronted with. And it's within the biblical framework that you see not only the hierarchy of the secret societies and the stalkers, the infiltration into the government, the secret government programs, the demonic stuff, the weaponized psychiatry, the whole thing that you're dealing with as a targeted individual, as you're being discredited, painted crazy, driven insane, traumatized, your mind is being invaded, you're isolated, and so on and so forth. You have to deal with. There's no getting out of it. Okay, and there's a benefit though, is that rather than to go along, uh, you know, with the rest of the world into the delusion of something like I just mentioned, some type of universalism or some other type of delusion, is that you can actually uh, come into something significant, which God, of course, uh, you know, El Elyon, the Most High God, is creating a family. Okay, and you can be part of that. You were yeah, you were created. Okay, and there's a reason you're here, and that is to be confronted with this, and through the subjection to the weakness or the law of sin and death, that you can be liberated and you can have life. Okay, and that fundamental reality of submission to God and and the test of faith and so on and so forth creates that significance, that refining process, and you can move into something that, like I said, is not only significant but eternal. And you can't forget that the whole set of coincidences that is around the perps, give them away. Okay, there's a lot of times the whole idea of you being cursed, or somehow you deserve this, or whatever the gaslighting is that you're dealing with as a targeted individual, is that you've been left out of this whole thing. And what's the obvious contradiction? Okay, there's I've talked about that before. A lot of the people that are experiencing gang stalking are accused of being, some type of deviant or whatever, or they're painted as this horrible person, because they've got to demonize you, because they've got to justify what they're doing, because there is an issue of conscience. Okay, and they're desperately trying to manufacture justification around this whole thing, not only just to bring people into it, but so they can go to bed at night. I would imagine there's a lot of people out. I've bet a few of them that they have a crisis in their conscience. They know what they're doing is wrong. Okay, that's the culpability that goes along with this whole thing. And I've talked about the fact that targeted individuals are basically bait. Everybody's being condemned. The worst of it is not. I mean, the worst experience is being a targeted individual, but the effect that comes out of it can be healed, right? Getting back to what I was talking about before, you're subjected to this whole thing, but it's, time can heal it. You're not going to go back to the rose-colored glasses that you had before, but you can move into something significant in the sense that you can have, truth, and you can have real relationships, and you can have a real understanding of the world that you're in, and move into eternity. But yeah, the whole idea of you knowing what's around you now. Well, yeah, there's going to be trauma. There is going to be an effect. Okay, but the contradictions that are around you should should open up a whole new level of understanding and perceptual framework concerning this, is because, like I said, you're being accused of a lot of those things. What about the people in your community that have obviously done those things? It's like, right now in the state that I live in, I can look up all the people who are sexual offenders and violent offenders and all that stuff. They've got their mug shots. They've got little, dots on the map. They've got, all this stuff about them. And they're not, for the most part, I've looked into this stuff too. They're not experiencing harassment. They're not. I've met some of the people that are put on this list. Of course, some of them will say, well, it's a lie. It's, my ex-girlfriend made up a lie, or my boyfriend, wanted to get the kids taken away from me, or whatever, and whatever. But the point is they're not dealing with gang stalking. They're not worried that people are going to come in their house and poison their food, or that they're going to go to a restaurant and deal with food tampering, or that people are going to attack their pets or their personal property, or come into their house at night and drug them, or whatever, you know sabotage their job or their career or something. They're not worried about that. And so you can see the obvious contradictions of that. So what about the people that are engaged in this whole thing? Well, they're breaking the laws of the universe, in the sense that they need mercy, right? That's one of the fundamental realities that you have to grasp as soon as you're dealing with this whole thing. And the biblical framework is that we're all sinners. The law is a schoolmaster to draw us near to the Messiah, where we can find forgiveness and atonement and so on and so forth in life. And if we remain in faith and we're in Christ, we'll go on into eternity. But you know, what about the people that have all this other stuff that God is supposedly denying you? Well, some of them are very corrupt. Some of them are involved in maybe the mob, or in some real nasty stuff in higher levels of the government or whatever. They got a lot of money, or they're false preachers, false prophets, stuff like that. A lot of people talk about getting gang stalked in church. And once you look at the landscape and you look at some of the stuff in the Bible, like Paul wrote to Timothy, he said that when I leave, wolves are going to creep in, not sparing the flock, introducing destructive heresies and doctrines of demons and stuff like that. And yeah, what was about them? They got all kinds of money, right? I could mention names of a lot of obvious charlatan false preachers who've had ministries for decades, and they've got all kinds of money, hundreds of millions of dollars or more, right? Well, if God was really punishing you, or you had been selected, for that type of curse, you think He'd start with people like that, right? A little bit of a contradiction there in there. And so you can see the obfuscation of reality. And the kingdom of darkness is ruling the world, and that, it's not to create a soteriological platform out of gang stalking. It's not to say that all targeted individuals are these, pure, holy, saintly like people. Some of them are involved in nefarious activity. Some of them aren't. Some of them are Christians. Some of them aren't. Okay. But I have noticed that there are a high percentage of people uh, in the targeted individual community who are very good people and they're minding their own business. They're not doing anything to anybody. They don't have criminal records or whatever. That's suspicious. Okay, that just adds another element to this whole thing. So there are people who are being tested or persecuted because of their faith. The perps are fake. They're cowards. They're ignorant. They're contradictive, and they're headed for a blowback. And they're gonna have that eventually. That's one of the obvious, end all be all to this is that they're setting themselves up. They're doing it to themselves. They're torturing you. That they need mercy. Like I said, eventually we're all going to be headed to that judgment, and they didn't give it. Right? They're just you know it's going to come back to you. Stirred and shaken. Right? What you give is what you're going to get, and that's not going to be good. So hopefully you guys can hear me. We had some technical difficulties, and so hopefully everybody is hearing what I'm saying. And we do have a prayer request out there, and it's for Drew or Andy Smith. And we'd like to pray in the mighty name of the Lord Jesus that that Andy would have peace and that he would have a time of refreshing and whatever else he needs. The Lord knows what that is. And there's a lot of targeted individuals out there dealing with it. I've been dealing with some stuff lately because we're all tested and we're all, being subjected to this whole thing. And there's a lot of psychological trauma involved in gang stalking. And just the whole idea that you don't know when it's going to happen. It's like having that hammer hanging over your head. You don't know when it's going to drop. You don't know, what's going to happen. And then you're getting accused of all these things, and you got to live your life. You got to try to make money. You got to try to deal with your social needs and everything else. And it's very difficult. And we just pray for all targets out there that they would have that peace that surpasses all understanding, and that this ordeal would not only help refine them, but they take them into a higher level of understanding and relationship with the Most High. And we just pray that in the name of the Lord Jesus. And I don't think we have any more prayer requests. And let's see who's out here. Targeted Pat, welcome to the live stream. Battle for your brain. Welcome to the last live stream. Gang stalking must end. Welcome. Social media beef. Welcome to the live stream. And it looks like they've been dealing with gang stalking for 15 years. That's a long time. That's definitely something to be said. And my hat goes off to you. There's a lot of targets that have been dealing with this stuff for decades, and it's very difficult. Okay, and let's see here what else we've got. Lisa Grant, welcome to live stream. Andy, you are out there. Welcome. Minnie Soso, welcome to live stream. Mikey, welcome to the live stream. Okay. All righty. Holy Water, welcome to the live stream. And once again, I have no idea what's wrong with the microphone, so maybe we'll do a short live stream here. And Firefighter, welcome. Welcome to the live stream. Okay, let's see. Folger, welcome to the live stream. And Social Media Beef says, I can't have not even one friend. That is okay. Sorry, I'm having a hard time reading this. I'm doing fine. Jesus is my friend. Yeah, well, that's one of the things that that you can have. You know that the Lord is faithful, and you know that He will never leave you nor forsake you, and that's something that is precious in this. And you know, if nothing else, if that's all that comes out of the gang stalking and the subjection to this, you know, frail world and the people around you who will turn on you, it's worth it. It is something that is fundamental in our existence, and that's good. It's not that you can't have friends. It's that it's just people can be turned. I mean, if they're not walking with the Lord, they can be used, and even if they are, they have weaknesses, and this is tough. I mean, that's why you have a lot of division in the target individual community, and it's not easy. It's not easy to just keep going, just to have that hope, you know. And you know, I've mentioned this before that there are a lot of people out there who, you know, they talk about hope. I have hope, but their hope is in something that is false. They might be happy, they might be regulated, they might, you know, have the things of this world, so on and so forth. But you know, eventually they're going to run into reality. And you know, for you as a target dealing with this environmental tyranny, sometimes it's hard to have that, and that's okay. And you have to realize that you are, you know, just a human being, and your circumstances are going to have an effect on you. Okay, and that's why we have the prayer requests. That's why it's important to pray and to seek God, and to realize that when you're being attacked by these things, that it is the, you know, it's the kingdom of darkness, right? It's that contradiction that I talked about before, in the sense that you have people out there who are doing some very obviously evil things, where they're not walking with the Lord. They're not dealing with that, right? But the whole idea is you know, you've been cursed or whatever. But really, I think a lot of it, especially for the targeted individual believers, is you're being processed. Okay, that you're being tested, in other words. And the reason that some of you are experiencing this real heavy harassment is because they want you to give up. They want you to become emotionally affected, and they want to critique you, they want to break you down, they want to remold you. And I've talked about the fact that, you know, it's like they feed off the trauma. They want to repurpose you, they want to destroy you. A lot of people do get repurposed, you know. It's like the I mentioned the landscape of the church community out there, right? You have people who are deconstructing or whatever, and you can see the obvious problem that has happened. You have a type of romantic projection where people are, you know, and the gospel is preached to them, but the, you know, the organizations are false. The preacher is a charlatan, or they're a false prophet or whatever. They're not genuine. They have false doctrine. They're promoting maybe a prosperity gospel or something else that's unrealistic, or something that gives, you know, the kingdom of darkness leeway over the environment around the target, like election, or you know, the Calvinism or something like that, or some type of mystery that you just never know what God is going to do, you know, or some other type of scripture taken out of context. That's always how you form a cult. But what happens? Well, you know, you feel good at first, right? And you get drawn in, and then people become disillusioned. They have that romantic projection, in the sense that they are presented something that is unrealistic about the Word of God and about being a disciple of Christ, that God's going to make them rich, and they're always going to be healthy, and they're going to cast out all the demons wherever they go, and it's all going to be peachy, and they're going to fly like eagles over everything, and it's just going to be wonderful. And you know, the problem is that environmental tyranny comes out of the infiltration into the community, not only into the doctrines, but into the people who are around you in that community. And so, you know, you know, the kingdom of darkness is not dumb, okay? And you know, some of the people are just, they're going to be, you know, high on the hog. They're going to have all that stuff, and they're going to go after certain people and target them, in the sense that they're going to look like they're cursed, right? But we don't know what's wrong with you. It's like the targeted individual, they're being gang stalked or what. We don't know. I don't have that problem. God must hate you, or you must be doing something wrong. And that disillusionment process begins. That romantic projection that's created by the false doctrine and the charlatans and the cult atmosphere starts to break apart. And, that's where you have people really starting to become confused. Okay. Not only are they falling out of the community, but they start to fall out of their faith in God, or even that it's real, because you have such kooky doctrines and stuff out there that that it all seems real, and then all of a sudden it starts to fall apart. You've got the Peter Pan. It's like the children of the. It's not that really at first the children or the people who have simple faith, they have everything they need, right? It's all that garbage that comes later when people twist the word of God and create these false doctrines and everything. That's when the confusion comes in. So that's when it's important to be spiritually mature. But to say that you can't come to faith as a babe, or that the little children, for example, can't come to Jesus, that's not true. Okay, you can. It's just later you can get sucked into all those little false doctrines and all the games, right? And then people become disillusioned. So if you can stay in that Peter Pan stage, or you're taking a chance. If you start to falter, you start getting subjected to that environmental tyranny, and then what happens? And then, of course, you can deconstruct, or you start throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You start believing something that's false, something that's not true, or whatever. Or then you get into the imposters, where they figure it out. Something's phony, something stinks here, but it seems to be working. So I'm just going to play along with it, Max. It's like the false teachers. Some of those guys know what they're teaching is false, but they're making a good living. It seems to be working. They're at the top of their community. They have a lot of benefits, so they just stay there. And not too many people move on to that place where they break away from that delusion and they still have their faith. They move into that stage where they're, I don't know, spiritually mature. They've gone through all that stuff, and they have escaped that disillusionment. They've broken free from that romantic projection and the false doctrines, so they can escape that whole thing. But when you look at that framework that's out there, you can see what happens. And a lot of people don't understand what's going on. Okay. And when it comes to the target of an individual, it's similar, because you are dealing with that type of environmental tyranny, right? And so if you're subjected to the harshness, the toxic environment of a target, you're susceptible to false information. You're susceptible to believing something that's not true, right? False, I don't know, false information appearing real, right? Or whatever. When you get into the fear aspect of all the tyranny that is around you, that you start to believe the lies that they want you. You start to believe that you're crazy. You start to believe that God hates you. You start to believe that there isn't any justice or whatever. And that's the danger of this whole thing. I'm going to go back in to the comments. Like I said, hopefully you guys can still hear me. Okay. All right. Okay. On average, Joe, welcome to the live stream. Okay. Yeah, I'm just looking for something I can build on. I don't know if the volume is, it looks like you guys aren't complaining too much, but we might have to cut the live stream short. We'll see what's going on here. Okay. Yeah, firefighter is referencing Ephesians. For our weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imaginations of every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. Yeah, and that's tough to do. And that environmental tyranny is what gets people to believe the lie. You know, And you see, not only in the targeted individual, but in the church community, you see these things going on. Like I said before, you have that counterfeit love, you have counterfeit hope, you have a counterfeit type of prosperity that's out there, and you don't, you can't be bewitched by this whole thing. And the PTSD that you deal with as a targeted individual just adds to that whole thing, right? Because the whole idea is to use this incremental process of breaking people down, whether it's in the religious aspect or the faith aspect, or just as far as gang stalking is concerned, you take them incrementally into a place where they are being broken down, boxed in, traumatized, and the whole idea is to destroy their love and their hope, and then accuse them and get them to internalize the whole thing and either repurpose them or destroy them or feed on them. Okay. And, you know, like I said, the process of healing involves the truth. Okay. So it won't be so depressing once you see the truth about it. If you just believe that there's nothing out there except the blackness of space and that we're on a rock just floating through it and we're a miracle of evolution, we came out of an explosion, and these people are part of this military and industrialized monster that is attacking you, that government only option, and somehow we have to have a lawsuit, or we have to get a voice, and people just have to wake up, and are we ever going to get, is it going to be too late? That's okay. That's not going to help you out. Okay. It's not that a lawsuit wouldn't be good. It's not that disclosure or something like that, but realistically, we have a lot of examples of, like, I don't know, the Kennedy assassination that is still locked away. you know you guys haven't looked into that one. And it's not to say that couldn't happen, but that's ultimately not the truth about what's going on. The truth is that there is spiritual wickedness, and the truth about it is these people who are being, involved in this, they're not gaining something, they're losing something, and that you're not cursed, you're not part of it, which is actually a blessing, even though you're dealing with very abrasive circumstances, and that ultimately there's going to be perfect justice, and that all this stuff is going to come to light, where it seems like you're just being boxed in and driven crazy, and nothing's going to ever come of it, and you'll see, no, that's not true. Okay, there will be a day of reckoning, and your hope is in the ultimate justice of God, and He's going to do that. Okay, and your hope isn't in getting whatever the Brady Bunch 2.0, the house on the hill, or the CEO job where you're going to make a bunch of money in a world run by the devil. It's that you're gonna escape the tyranny of the world, the flesh, and the devil through Christ, by faith, and that you can have eternal life in a perfect world. First, the millennial reign, which is going to be beautiful, and then eternity after that. And that's the truth about it. Okay, so is that really depressing? All right, do you want to go along with this cabal, with these individuals who've conformed to this monstrosity that is out there, that you are dealing with, that you can see with your own two eyes? Are you getting this? This is real. It's in your face. Okay, you're not crazy. Okay, there are people involved, and it's not just the cops in your town or whatever. It's not just some Freemason cult or whatever. It's not just some kind of MKL. This is bigger than that. All those things can be involved. This is huge. And if you're one of those targets who's experiencing that, you need to see the blessing involved in this whole thing is that your faith can be strengthened by this. Your faith is more precious than anything in this world. Okay, assume that what I'm saying is true, that there is an eternal hell and an eternal heaven. That matters. Okay, and a lot of people are believing the lies. A lot of people don't have that faith. Some of the people out there, that they don't even know about this whole thing, and it's just tempting to believe that they've got it all, but they don't. Okay, and that you have that opportunity to see what's going on, to draw near to God, and to and to escape the wrath to come, because it's coming. Okay. I've talked about the fulfillment of Bible prophecy for the naysayers that's out there. And some people would even say that the Jews regathered over there in Israel is false. There's a lot of people who are being led into anti-Semitism, and that's also prophesied in the Bible. Very evil. That's almost right along with the Antichrist spirit, right? Where people, they want to talk about God, but they don't want to talk about Jesus, right? Or they will deny, the prophecies of Jeremiah and Isaiah and the book of Daniel, and that God is going to regather his people over there in Jerusalem, which is actually the true meaning of Armageddon, Harmogay, the Mount of Assembly, right? Harmageddon, the battle of gods and men, the culmination of the cosmic battle of good and evil over there in the Middle East. A lot of people might laugh at that, but there's obvious evidence. I've gone into that before, where you can calculate that stuff out. Okay. But just like when Jesus referenced in John 6, that you don't know who I am because you were not taught of God or the prophets, that people were faithless. They were not diligent. They were not drawing near to God. And as a result, they were blind and they were given a spirit of stupor. And it wasn't just some type of judgment that came along. It was something that they were complicit in, is that they didn't use the resources and the time that they had to study and to be wise, right? It's not that you can take credit for your salvation, but you have a responsibility and a moral obligation. It's like the stalkers that you're dealing with, right? It's like that whole universalist thing of the energy guff, or the pleroma or whatever that people get into in other religions and false doctrines or whatever. Is, well, how do you explain evil then, right? You have a responsibility to discern the truth, right? And that a lot of this stuff is prophesied in there. The hate, the supersessionism, the anti-Semitism that's out there is trying to make it look like the Jews are the aggressors. And well, I'm not saying that they're perfect, okay, but you have to see the disinformation that's out there, and you have to see the obvious, red flags that go along with prophecy, showing everyone who will look and be taught that we are headed right towards the end of this whole thing. Not that far away, I don't think. Okay, it's very important. I mean, you might die tomorrow, right? So it's not that you might have another 10, 20 years. You better get on this whole thing. If you're not paying attention to it and you're wondering why you're being targeted, there could be a lot of reasons. You could be a vessel of wrath. You could be that experiment. You could, just be somebody's fun, or they're just feeding on you, controlling you. But at the same time, ultimately, it's because it's a battle of souls. Okay, it's a battle of darkness and light, of truth and lies, and they are believing the lie, and they've gotten their hands dirty. And it's like I said at the beginning of the video, they've got a lot of inconsistencies, right? If everything was so good, why is there slavery? Why do they have to do these things? Why do they have to lie? Why do they have to torture you? Why do they have to engage in this when there's plenty of other options that are out there? Because their spiritual handlers are making them, and there is a need, and you can see these needs, right? Okay, it's like when targeted individuals get attacked, and I've told you, don't react because why? Because they need this stuff, and if you don't give them the reaction, if they don't get what they want, they're doing it for nothing, and you win, and you can literally turn this whole thing around. And I've talked about the whole idea of negative consequences, right? So that we'll say they get you to react or whatever, they feed on your adrenaline, your loose, or whatever you're going to call it, your reaction. They can manipulate you or whatever, and they get that reward. They're after it. But if they don't, well, now it's all Blue Mondays, isn't it? You can win this. I'm telling you, man, you're already a winner. You're not involved in this cabal out there of lies, deception, and torture and murder. This is covert murder. It is. It's worse than murder. It'd be more merciful for somebody to shoot you in the head or cut your head off or something, to be subjected to this torture, where you're being taken into a place where you're being traumatized. Well, you have post-traumatic syndrome, and you're isolated. You're starting to wonder if you're in hell or in the Matrix or something. You don't know what's going on. It's very cruel. Okay. And like I said, the blowback is coming. There's really no getting out of it. And you can't forget that stuff. Going back into the comments, let's see. Okay, firefighter says gang stalking is spiritual warfare manifested in the temporal, as above, so below. Interesting. I would agree. I would agree. It really it opens up. You get a look behind the veil when it's like the people that experience this stuff. It's like whoa. You know, yeah, that's really possible. It's really possible for this to be happening to you. It doesn't seem like it. How could they all, be getting together? How could people know what they? And I've talked about the fact that's proof. It's proof of the spiritual dimension. Okay, it's not all neural monitoring. It's not all, some kind of government technology. And when people forget about that, that's a problem. And even if they are using that, which there is tech, they got it from them. Do your history. You have a responsibility and a moral obligation to discern the truth and see what's really going on. Ultimately, you're going to be before the Lord, and so are they. Well, I keep getting these comments about my microphone being muffled, so I might have to do some work on the phone here, but I am going to end the live stream and maybe I'll come back on here tomorrow or tonight if I can figure out what's going on with it. Sometimes that happens when I'm washing off the phone from being at work, and it might take a little while to get it fixed. Hopefully, it won't require me to buy another phone. But I'd like to thank everybody for coming in here. I'd like to thank all of you for being adults. And as I always mention, if you guys have a prayer request, hopefully I didn't forget something in the comments. It's really been a stressful week, but praise be to God. I'm still here and I appreciate your prayers. I think we've all been dealing with spiritual warfare. As firefighter has talked about, that this is, it sucks because as you move through this whole thing, you deal with the PTSD, and you're basically accused of all kinds of things, right? You're that shut in. You're angry. You're this. You're that. You're the other. And really, it's what you're just reacting naturally to the stimuli that you're dealing with. Of course, but they're the ones that did it. They have done this to you, and you can't forget that. Okay, is it? Yes, it is possible for you to heal. Okay, but rather than to think and fantasize about how you're going to return to your little life before this, where you were just oblivious to all this stuff, that's not realistic. Okay. The other thing I'd like to mention is that, some of this stuff is just demonic, and, God can intervene and he can, it's just like the stuff that I've talked about concerning the landscape of the spiritual realm, where you have the unclean spirits and other things that are the devourers of men. And, a lot of you guys are getting demonically attacked. I believe that that's mostly what I'm dealing with. When I'm dealing with people, they're being influenced demonically. I've seen a lot of that. I've mentioned a lot of that in the videos, is that he can change that as well. And that he could be using this. Who knows why? God knows what he's doing, and you can trust that he's working this out for your benefit. But, it can end. Okay. And there's nothing wrong with praying for that. But at the same time, if it builds up your faith and God has decided to do this, you can also thank him for those things, right? And you don't have to be a victim of that, but you can also heal through time, right? And I've mentioned before that, you know, if you're getting attacked like every day or every week or every month, or just keep a mental note of that thing. And there's probably something that you want to do that they've got their fingers in. Just, it's not over. Okay. It's not wrong to want to do those things, to want to have a family, to want to have a house, to want to have a good career. There's nothing wrong with that. But for now, you just put that up on the shelf and work with what you have. And you just pray about those things and just keep asking the Lord. Uh, and he will hear, and he will respond and give you what you need. Maybe not what you want, but what you need. And I've also mentioned before that the seriousness of, I don't know, H5N1 is something that I think that everybody should be considering a possibility of something that could happen in the future. You want to prepare for those things if possible. There's going to be some fireworks that are lighting off concerning the political landscape as Donald Trump comes into power here. But who knows exactly what's going to happen? But you want to be prepared. And rather than to promote fear, I'm just going to promote prayer, okay? Because prayer works. And glory be to God through that whole thing. And like I said, I'd like to thank everybody for all your prayers. And don't forget to share and like. Hopefully the sound quality will improve. Sorry about that. And I'd like to thank everybody who's helped me. The link is in the description. The finances have been kind of tough lately. They've hired a bunch of new DoorDash drivers, and my wages have dropped a couple $100 a week. But anyway, your prayers would be appreciated. God bless. Be good to yourselves. Be safe.